He's a distinguished fellow in economics at the Heritage Foundation and was an economic advisor to former President Trump. So how big of a deal is this meeting?
Well, good question. The president said he's not going to negotiate, so a lot of Republicans are wondering what's the point of the meeting, right? The Republicans have passed a bill that raises the debt ceiling, I think in an incredibly responsible way. It would cut about $4 trillion off of our debt over the next 10 years. It would have work requirements for people on welfare. It would put a cap on government spending. Look, the fact of the matter is that this runaway spending and this massive debt, which is now $31.5 trillion and headed to $50 trillion, is a financial catastrophe. We have to do something about it. And I don't think there's any way that Biden is going to get a debt ceiling extension done without negotiating some reductions in this enormous multi-trillion-dollar debt that we're racking up.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, obviously inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Every single year, that number is going up and up and up because America has been in debt for so long. And every single year, we go through these same conversations about politicians on either side not being able to come to an agreement, being at an impasse, and then just days before we're about to fall off a financial cliff, boom, they do what they could have done months ago. Why aren't they doing it early?
Well, first of all, you're making a very good point. You know, I arrived in Washington in 1984 working on budget and fiscal issues. So I've been to this rodeo before many times.
I'm sure you have.
There have been 8 times in my career when whether it was a Republican president, a Democratic Congress, or a Democratic Congress and a Republican president, where the two parties sat down and they negotiated. And what's new here is Biden's basically just saying, I'm not going to negotiate. Well, Joe, we have divided power in Washington. We have a democracy. You don't get to make all the decisions here. So I do think at the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to have to negotiate. I'll tell you, I've been talking to the Republican leaders in the House, and they are pretty adamant that without negotiations, they are not going to move. They're not going to pass a clean debt ceiling bill. So this is headed to a big showdown. And I think, the big question is June 1st the real date? I don't believe it is. I believe that there are measures that the Treasury Department can take to extend that date probably into later in the summer. But at some point, you do reach the drop dead date.
But it was reported that Republicans, they presented this plan that they knew Democrats weren't going to go for, but it actually gave them some bargaining power, some leverage in some way. So what would need to happen at this meeting today that would move this forward rather than kicking it down the road?
Well, here's the important point. The Democrats and Joe Biden made a big miscalculation. They didn't think that the Republicans would be able to get a bill through the House, any bill to extend the debt ceiling. And Kevin McCarthy, I think, rather strategically did. He got 218 votes. So right now, just so people understand, the Republicans have passed a debt ceiling extension. It's the Democrats who can't get a bill through the Senate because the Democrats run the Senate. So it's a pretty, turmoil right now is, I guess, the word that I would use, because what are the Democrats going to do? They can't get a bill passed. The Republicans have done it in the House. The president's saying he's not going to negotiate. It looks like a big train wreck.
We don't have time for another train wreck.
Right.
We just don't. We've had enough of those this year. All right, Stephen Moore. Go ahead.
In the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to have to negotiate something, and we'll see what turns out. But I hope that they bring this debt down because it's affecting. And by the way, you and I aren't going to pay for all this debt. It's going to be our kids and our grandkids. Come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, hello. Well, Stephen Moore, let's see. An invitation by the president could mean negotiation. We appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.